Today, let us share the Word of God with a sermon titled, Through Him Who Gives Me Strength. Whenever we do something, whether it's for the gospel or for day-to-day affairs, we think that we have to have a favorable environment in order to get a good result. However, when we consider the forefathers of faith, all of them walked the gospel path in difficult circumstances and environments. That is the history of our gospel. I think it is important to discover that God always gives us His power whenever we feel we are lacking in a difficult situation. In world history, it's uncommon to find a hero or a great historical figure who came from favorable conditions, a good family, or a perfect environment. Generally, we can see many stories of famous historical figures who made a name for themselves after overcoming hostile conditions, difficult circumstances, and adversities. Even Julius Caesar of the Roman Empire, who is considered to be the father of Rome, suffered from epilepsy. He overcame his physical disability and fortified the foundation of the Roman Empire. Even Augustus, one of the greatest Roman emperors, suffered from severe stomach ulcers all throughout his life. Many think people like that couldn't possibly have any difficulties or worries. However, all of them had impairments, deficiencies, and inadequacies, which they overcame. Furthermore, when we look back at the apostles of faith, Peter, John, and James, their circumstances and environment weren't the most favorable at that time. They weren't born into royalty. Instead, they were fishermen or tax collectors. However, weren't they able to meet Christ in these surroundings? And through Him, did they have hope for heaven and become great examples of faith? I can't do this because I didn't go to Harvard. I didn't graduate from Seoul National University, so I'm not talented enough. It's better not to talk this way. Though we didn't go to the best universities on this planet, such as Harvard or Seoul National University, who is teaching us the wisdom to rule over the universe? People from Harvard learn from other people, and people from Seoul National University also learn from other people how to live only on this earth. But what are we learning right now? Aren't we learning all the laws and ways to live in the world of a higher dimension, in the vast and immense universe? All power comes from God. I can do everything through Him who gives me strength. Believing this, let's stop focusing on our inadequacies and open our spiritual eyes, looking to God's power that fills up our deficiencies. Let's look at Exodus chapter 4, verse 1. Moses answered, "What if they do not believe me or listen to me and say, 'The Lord did not appear to you'? God gave Moses a command to free the Israelites from Egypt. However, Moses thought he didn't have the power, strength, or ability to lead the people. Furthermore, Moses petitioned God to remove him as leader of the Israelites because he thought he was too slow in speech. Let's look at chapter 3 to see what mission God gives to Moses. And then let's move on to chapter 4. Let's look at Exodus chapter 3, verse 9. And now, the cry of the Israelites has reached me, and I have seen the way the Egyptians are oppressing them. So now go. I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. God explained the reason why he called Moses. Verse 11. But Moses said to God, "Who am I, that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? How can a person like me carry out such an extraordinary work?" He presented his case before God, saying, "I am not a worthy vessel for such a tremendous work." Verse 12. And God said, "I will be with you. And this will be the sign to you that it is I who have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain." Once again, God gave Moses the command to go to the Israelites and guide them. And again, Moses objected. Chapter 4, verse 1. Moses answered, "What if they do not believe me or listen to me and say, 'What if the Israelites do not acknowledge me as their leader, even though you sent me to them? What if they don't acknowledge and recognize me as the one sent by God?'" Moses stated his concerns once more. "The Lord did not appear to you." Verse 2. Then the Lord said to him, "What is that in your hand?" "A staff," he replied. The Lord said, "Throw it on the ground." Moses threw it on the ground, and it became a snake, and he ran from it. Then the Lord said to him, "Reach out your hand and take it by the tail." So Moses reached out and took hold of the snake, and it turned back into a staff in his hand. God reassured Moses by saying, "When I send you, I will also give you the ability to complete this mission." God said, "I have granted this ability to you." Then he asked Moses, "What is that in your hand?" "A staff," he replied. The staff was just an ordinary tool. But since God asked Moses to use it, doesn't it mean that God gave him abilities? It is the proof that God gave him abilities. When children cannot do something, supposing you have a 6-year-old child, would you give your child the keys to your car and ask, "Could you drive to the market and get me some groceries?" Who would ask such a thing? Errands are only entrusted to those who are able to carry them out. When God entrusts us with a task, doesn't that mean He has already prepared everything for us to carry it out? When God asked Moses, "What is that in your hand?" Moses replied, "It is a staff." The staff had no power. It was just a tool that Moses had. God said, throw it on the ground. And when Moses threw it on the ground, it turned into a snake. Moses was startled and tried to run from it. But then God said, reach out your hand and take it by the tail. So Moses took hold of the snake by the tail, and it turned back into a staff. God let him know, even through something small, that I have given you all the power to accomplish it. So don't worry and just do it. This is the meaning contained in God's command. Everyone, we are lacking in many ways, just like Moses. Moses was given a position of leadership and gained much wisdom from the Egyptian royal family. However, from the biblical standpoint, he was totally unqualified to lead the Israelites. So he was afraid. Will I be able to lead these people correctly? Will I be able to perform the role as a mediator between God and these people? Moses was afraid when he thought about his inabilities. We must never forget that when God asks us to do something, He has already given us the ability to do it. He doesn't ask us to produce good results because of a good environment. As children of Zion, we must believe that even when faced with unfavorable, negative, and difficult circumstances, God will surely give us the ability to overcome them. Let's look at Philippians chapter 4, verse 13. I can do everything through Him who gives me strength. Apostle Paul did not say this because of arrogance, but what he was saying was, even though I cannot do everything by myself, I can do everything through God who gives me strength and ability. It is the same for us. We can do everything through God who gives us ability. Everything is new and unfamiliar to me. I don't know where to go or what to do. What should I study with someone to lead their soul into the arms of God? If we depend on our own abilities, we have no choice but to fail. We don't have power like Moses. To Moses, it was just an ordinary staff. But from the moment God asked him, "What is that in your hand?" everything began to change by God's power. Likewise, when God chooses us to be vessels, everything seems to be difficult. Just like when Moses encountered the things he had never seen or experienced before. But what can we do through God who gives us strength? Since God is the one who is giving us ability, we can do everything. We must have faith in God. Please remember that the only way everything will be accomplished is by having faith in God. This is the destiny of the gospel. When God asks us, "What do you have?" we cannot say anything other than what we have. However, shouldn't we always remember that God grants us ability beyond what we have? Let's look at Matthew chapter 28, verse 18. Then Jesus came to them and said, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always to the very end of the age." Jesus said, "Go to all nations." When God commanded Moses to go to the Israelites, He had many reasons not to. He knew that he was lacking in many ways. He told God that he was slow in speech, among other weaknesses. But God said, "Don't you know that I chose you? I didn't choose you because of your abilities. I didn't choose you because of your leadership skills or eloquence. It is because of your passion and special faith for God in the center of your heart." God sees what people cannot see within themselves and chooses people based on what he sees in them. Sometimes God chose Peter, sometimes John, and sometimes Matthew. Doesn't God choose people and grant them positions and missions based on things that are invisible to the world, but visible to God? As they carry out their mission, God grants them more ability. We are told to go to Samaria and to the ends of the earth to meet people of all nations. But we think, how would I be able to preach the gospel to all nations? We are always worried. But what did God say we can do through him who gives us strength? Everything. The word everything indicates all circumstances, all conditions, and by all means, and is used to assure us that there is no problem. I can do everything through him who gives me strength. When God tells us to go to all nations, isn't it because he has made everything possible? The 12 leaders of Israel were sent to spy out the land of Canaan. After they came back, 2 of the spies said, "We can take over the land." But the other 10 spies said, "We cannot take over the land." Why did the 10 spies say that they cannot take over the land? Taking a closer look at the Bible, we can find the reason they gave this report. It is because they were only thinking about their limited ability. Then, how were Joshua and Caleb able to say that they would certainly do it? Instead of looking at their own abilities, whose ability did they look at? God's ability. Who gave them the command? God did. Since it was God who promised it to them, they believed that it would certainly happen. How small did Joshua consider the Canaanites to be? He compared them to bread. He regarded them as food that he could cook. They are bread for us. They are nothing. By saying they are nothing, he meant to say, isn't God with us? Brothers and sisters, wherever you go, I hope all of you keep your faith in the words, "I can do everything through him who gives me strength." When God commands us to preach the gospel in Samaria and to the ends of the earth, we should not think, "I don't know how to speak English, and I can't speak any other foreign languages. Wouldn't I just be wasting my time?" Worrying like this is pointless. God can use anything to move people's hearts. Isn't that why our Zion has been established in every country around the world? We must only have faith in God. We need to disregard our own abilities and look at everything through God's power. You cannot see your back, but you can see it with a mirror. Please do not forget that God is always with us. David, Solomon, Gideon, Joshua, and Moses all commonly said, "I am lacking in many ways. How can a person like me do that?" Looking at their own abilities, they felt like things that God commanded were impossible to do. Solomon felt the same way. "God, I am only a small child. How can I reign over all these people?" He had so many worries. He was young. and they had many enemies. He offered 1,000 burnt offerings to God with the thought, how can I successfully lead these people in God's will? After he offered 1,000 burnt offerings, God appeared to him in a dream and said, ask for whatever you want. Since he made great effort in offering 1,000 burnt offerings, it was clear he had a strong desire for something. When God said, ask for whatever you want, he said, Lord, I am only a small child. How can I govern all these people? At the time, kings had to make judgments for difficult trials. Give me wisdom to judge righteously, so that your people may not suffer injustice. God was greatly pleased when he heard Solomon's wish. Solomon did not ask for honor or fame, but only for wisdom to make correct judgments for the people. When Solomon asked for wisdom, so that no one will suffer injustice, God said, since you asked for wisdom, I will also give you wealth, riches, and honor. After Solomon received wisdom from God, Israel grew prosperous under Solomon. Isn't this process recorded in the book of 1 Kings? Solomon also looked at his abilities at first. I'm lacking in many ways. How would I be able to do it? Didn't Solomon become a great king who was able to govern his kingdom faithfully after he was given power from God? Not only Solomon, it was the same for Gideon. When God used Gideon and was about to save Israel from the hand of Midian, the first thing Gideon said was, my clan is the weakest, from the weakest tribe among the 12, and I'm the least in my family. How can I save Israel out of Midian's hand? How can I save Israel out of Midian's hand? With my poor background and abilities. This is how most people would think. If God says, go to Samaria and to the ends of the earth, you just must rely on God's words and go. However, the first thing people usually do is worry. I cannot do this or that. I'm deficient in this and that. How can I accomplish such a great thing? If you look above, God is there. God has made everything possible. God broke down gates of bronze and cut through bars of iron. He created all the conditions for victory. God has given us power already. But if we don't put it into practice, we will never witness the working of God's power. God called us even though we are lacking in many ways, just like Solomon, Gideon, Apostle Paul, and Peter. Good results don't always occur because of good environments. When our surroundings are unfamiliar and difficult, and various obstacles get in our way, we must keep in mind that God is always with us and gives us strength. We must not be like the 10 spies who gave bad reports based on their own judgments and abilities. But we must have faith like that of Joshua and Caleb who said, they are bread for us, they are nothing. We must have the spiritual eyes to see God's ability, so that with it, we can preach the gospel in Samaria and to the ends of the earth. Let us deliver good things to all people in the world. What kind of news is our gospel? It is good news. Isn't it happy news? We must never preach bad things to the world. We must never preach or teach bad things. I hope this gospel will be preached with the faith like that of Joshua and Caleb, and with faith in God, that I can do everything through Him who gives me strength. Hoping you receive much grace, I would like to conclude today's sermon. Thank you very much.